Hey everyone, I'm RA Christina, East Campus. This is Stephen at the PGCC, and we are going to discuss some topics related to dealing with being in college virtually and a lot of the challenges that have been associated with that, and also living on East Campus and just sort of living in this socially and physically distanced way for now. And we'll start with some introductions. Would you like to go first, Stephen? I was thinking maybe you could share your name, your pronouns, anything you'd like to share about yourself, maybe working at the PGCC. And if you want to name like a weather to describe sort of like your mood right now or your feeling or something.
Okay. Let's see. Well, my name is Stephen Goings. My spiritual name is Quasar. I am a unlicensed therapist at the Personal Growth and Counseling Center. I originally got there in 2016 as an MSW intern. And then I did my postmaster's internship there, and then I got hired. And so now I've completed all my supervisory hours, and I'm ready to take the tests for my exam whenever that should occur. My pronouns, thank you. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, but I will accept he, him, his. And you have to have a very special relationship with me to use she, her, hers. And let's say, so my personal weather, I think a little foggy this morning. It's got kind of that slow start where you've had a 3-day weekend and like, oh yeah, work. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, same for me. I feel like for me it's in between a little bit of fog and like a little bit of a tornado. Just the fatigue and just dealing with all the things. And yeah, like I said, my name's Christina, and I'm an RA, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. A little bit of background about myself. I'm in my second year in the MSW program. I love it. I recommend anyone who's interested in going into social work. The program's great. I'm learning so much, and I'm also a parent of a 6-year-old who's distance learning, so juggling a lot right now. And I guess I already shared my weather. Very cool. So first, what I wanted to talk about is, I wanted to acknowledge that a lot of students on East Campus and in general are feeling isolated and lonely, and I'm wondering what kind of steps one can do to support themselves when they're dealing with the challenges of being in school virtually and possibly living on East Campus alone, maybe far away from any family support, and dealing with all the changes related to the pandemic. So,
well, I think first I have give a disclaimer.
Yeah.
That what I have are educated opinions, but they're still opinions, and everyone drives under their own gas best. So if some of the things that I come up with work or you think are worthy of trying out, go ahead. But it doesn't mean that I'm right in some sort of cosmic.
Right. It's just advice or suggestions if one would like to take it.
Well, the first thing that I would say is there are two different things that have to be balanced here. One is trying to get your needs met, and one of those needs is we have a need for companionship, right? So we have to be, so this kind of pandemic forces us to be creative in how we're going to get those needs met. I wonder if people might rediscover writing letters.
Yeah.
uh, and what that feels like to get something in the mail, as opposed to, we're so used to this instant communication.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, so I think it's really important that you have some set of friends or relationships that you can maintain, whether it's through text or whether it's through Zoom or just over the phone. That is now probably not merely not merely um, a good thing, but probably even more of a necessary thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of things, though, when it comes to things like this, is developing and increasing your capacity to deal with unwanted experiences. So that we don't we so on the one hand, we want to seek our needs and create whatever socialization that we can create. Um, but we also need to increase our capacity to, like, it being okay to spend more time alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So isolation doesn't have to be a horrible thing. It's like, so there's a part of it, like, I need to kind of I think so much is how we frame things. So it's really easy to frame things as, well, now everything is on Zoom, and now I don't get to see my friends, um, and everything kind of feels as though it's not um, as intense and real as it was. Well, that's one way
Mm-hmm.
of framing things. The
Mm-hmm.
other way of framing things is, I'm surviving a pandemic in the world. And to really sit with that at the moment where most of us are surviving a pandemic, right? And think of the history of the world and just the fact that we have these technologies available to us. Can you imagine if we were living in a world in which this isolation, where we didn't have any of the social and technological tools that we have? So, many generations of humans over centuries have experienced things like this and worse with far less tools than we have. So I think, perspective taking is important when you're dealing with situations, really very unwanted situations like this.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great way to put it. Just, uh, listening to you say that, I'm thinking about how I framed my questions. It was like, it's like really seeing it, um, it's really framing it negatively. And it's not because and in my opinion, it's not because we're trying to avoid the negative, but just acknowledge it, but also acknowledge, like, wow, how much positive there is too. Like you said, we're surviving a pandemic, and we really have so many tools and resources that other people prior didn't have. And there's a lot of um like, yeah, positivity and resilience going on. Well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, and next I wanted to ask about steps students can take to kind of help balance their lives when they're sitting on the computer so much and they're getting kind of fatigued.
Mhm.
Zooming, if you have any tips
Well,
for that.
yeah, I'd say several things, and know that I'm in it too, right? I'm experiencing the exact same. There's never was a time when therapists are going through the same thing as their clients. It's certainly now,
Yeah.
right? So I would say, well, various things. I do think that it is very demanding to have your video on all the time and be kind of on stage in a very weird kind of different way. So I would, I mean, when it's just a lecture, unless you're required to have your face on the screen, I would limit the time that I have my face on the screen. There, I mean, like, there are times when you really need to, but I also would, I think, to the degree that you can, Um, for instance, I have an elliptical in my room. So if I'm on a 2-hour meeting, and a lot of this meeting is, I'm listening to information, I'm not really in the driver's seat,
Mm-hmm.
I will get on the elliptical and do something, right? So I don't have to be sitting down all the time. So if you have more than one computer monitor, I would switch it up. I mean, you want to create as much freedom and not feeling as overly tethered as as your particular circumstances and resources um, allow. And I would say, and I think, for not so much in classes, but for other parts of life, not everything has to be a Zoom meeting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Telephones work, emails work, and only I just say that because now our requirement of being online is so heavy that I
Mm-hmm.
think that we do need to look for ways to minimize that, or if I even need to have some hot tea or to do some things, what are soothing things that I can do for myself if I'm the type of person who's experiencing strain
Mm-hmm.
from being on Zoom all the time, right? So I want to think about what are my go-tos, or do I need to, and taking breaks. How can I get some physical exercise while I'm doing this, or just standing up versus sitting down, or just so that I'm not feeling stuck and like it's the same thing hour after hour after hour.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So you said even just changing it up as to like if you had multiple screens or even if you just sat maybe in different places in the home to do it just to like give it some variety.
That's my thinking,
Yeah.
and of course that depends on your ability to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, But, I even think sometimes, for people who are also doing socialization on Zoom, maybe that
Mhm.
should be somewhere else. Or, I
Mhm.
mean, physically, I mean, most people will probably have a sort of workstation for accomplishing tasks, right?
Mhm.
And that can be, writing homework or maybe being on class or something like, I think that we're almost forced to have this sort of bleed over between our well, certainly as a professional, my life is now in my room.
Yeah.
So it's not even in my house, it's in my room,
Yeah.
right? If a friend wants to Zoom me, I am not doing another Zoom call in my room. I'm going in the kitchen, I'm going anywhere but my room so I can feel the difference between work
Yeah.
and I want to have some fun. So it's kind of thinking,
I
how can
love
I
that.
create some barriers between these two worlds, and
Yeah.
making sure that I'm taking breaks and I'm hydrating and I'm sleeping, and all the normal things that you would do to take care of yourself. You really do have to do it. And my experience with teletherapy, as we're doing now, is I
Mhm.
would say a teletherapy session is twice as draining as, or maybe 3 times as draining as as face to face.
Mhm.
Why, I don't quite know, but I know my experience after 3 or 4 sessions on Zoom, I'm
Mhm.
tired in a different way than I was tired. I think that possibly in person you are you are you are experiencing a person more globally, not just their face.
Mhm.
You're getting all sorts of social cues and whatnot, and I think some
Yeah.
of these cues are affirming, where I feel like there's an extra strain on Zoom, which is why I say turn off your camera when you can. So you
Yeah.
don't. Mhm.
Yeah. I think that's such interesting advice and I hadn't thought about it so explicitly as with having the camera on for classes and stuff, but I think like you're saying it's sort of like an odd stage, because if you're really in an environment physically together, you're not just staring at their face the whole time, and also everyone isn't just staring at your face the whole time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, but like everyone's just like straight on with everyone else in the class and stuff.
And probably, I mean, so I don't, I'm not taking classes, so I have yet to have to experience a class in Zoom, but, I start thinking about what are the norms that have to be shifted in a certain way, because if it feels to me like the camera demands your attention, because you feel like if you're looking away or doodling, that it's a signal that you're not paying attention, but
Yeah.
you would not have your eyes focused on a teacher the entire there's a little, I mean, it's almost making us automatons, robots in a certain type of way. So I think we have to be a little more lax in some areas. And even as I'm saying this, my brain is yelling at me about the other side of things, because this is really, these interventions really depend on a particular person's constellation. So on the one hand, so for your overachievers who are doing everything by the book, they're going to have to compensate in the direction of more breaks and more relaxation and more not holding themselves to the same standard that they would under other circumstances, which can be really hard for perfectionists, for instance.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have folks who are easily distracted anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And so Zoom is just like, can you can get into the space where, you're doing everything but paying attention. You're on your computer anyway, and you're on other tabs and whatnot. And so you really have to know really what are your strengths and weaknesses, and therefore, and that will dictate how I need to compensate for this reality. Right.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I never thought about it like that, but I think that's accurate. I think I will just ask one more question. So I was wondering, because I know that there's some students who are kind of concerned about their friends or neighbors, and me as well as an RA, kind of like, do you have any tips or advice for maybe how to reach out to someone just to kind of check in and see how they're doing, or especially if they're feeling like a little bit disconnected?
My short answer is no. But my long answer is reach out and connect. I mean, I don't know, I just think that it's given it, if you have the capacity for it, and that's the first thing you have to check with yourself is, do I have the capacity? Do I have the want and longing and need for this? But I do think that we need to check up on each other, possibly quite a lot. But but check-ins can be very brief things, and this is the old-fashioned, or the Stevie Wonder song, I just called to say I love you. Right? It doesn't have to be a burdensome or a big heavy lift. But on Facebook, you just a wave or a poke. It's really up to you how much you want to check in, but I think the first thing is to know is that anyone who doesn't want to be checked in with can disappear, right? So you don't have to worry about whether they, they'll signal whether they want it or not. But I think err on the side of reaching out to people.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate you taking your time to do this and sharing your excellent advice. I took some notes down because I definitely want to utilize some of the things you said, and especially a lot of the things that you shared. I hadn't thought of things in that way before. So is a fresh perspective. So thank you. Um,
Well, it's great to
and
see you.
it was great to see you again. Um, all right. Well, I wish you the best with everything, and thank you again.
Okay, you too, Christina. Thank you.